What's up, guys? Running it back with another replay for you, and it's a bit of a rematch, I suppose, from the most recent tournament that I was playing in. It's me and Apostate playing again. I'm helming Khorne this time instead of Beastman, and he's going to be here on Nurgle, trying to make it work and make it happen. So we're going to see what happens here. And I'm bringing pretty interesting build, honestly. I'm bringing the Soul Grinder and the Skull Cannon in the opening. I've got some Marauders here, and I've got a decent number of Bloodletters. So 3 Marauders, 4 Bloodletters, Skull Cannon, and Soul Grinder with Valky up in the sky. Some Fleshhounds coming out for my first summon just to get some battlefield control going. You know, I'm a little slow here. You know, I don't have the most mobility out on the field quite yet. First Skull Cannon shot is going to kill 1 model. Not the most impressive performance from it so far, but you know, we'll see if we can get it working a little bit better. And Apostate's going to be bringing the Frolickers Bubonic, who are taking the middle objective. 3 Marauder Horsemen here with Kugath backing them up. He's throwing in on these Bloodletters, doing some nasty damage. And Exalted Plague Bearers, Festering Stooges included, as well as a regular Plague Bearer, really coming out onto the number 3 objective and getting very aggressive. I do get a nice shot with the Skull Cannon onto these Marauder throwing axes. They are trying to get target. They're trying to get axes onto the Soul Grinder here. Not doing the best work there. Getting a little bit of counterfire in return with my Soul Grinder as well. Picking off a few models and doing a little bit of damage. Soul Grinder firing in again and picking off a few more. You know, every time it's hitting, it's actually killing stuff, which is great. Valkia does take a shot from Kugath there. It's just so crazy how accurate he is, actually. Pretty surprising. Getting another model there. It's the Skull Cannon can be a little haggard sometimes. It's better getting side shots down formations than it is shooting head on for whatever reason. And right here, gonna get quite a few guys right there. You know, 3 of them, and getting some nice value out of this guy in the early going is very nice, but I do get pushed back pretty hard over here with the Bloodletters. They just took a ton of damage from the little javelins that the Exalted Plague Bearers have. I mean, these things have armor piercing and magical damage, so they're pretty nasty. Big miss from the Skull Cannon, I mean, over here, which is very unfortunate. Soul Grinder not being super accurate, but getting some nice shots in there, picking off a few more models of the Marauder throwing axes, but does need to get out of here. These guys will do quite a bit of damage if given the opportunity against them. A few more guys with the Skull Cannon, and I'm just, you know, I'm doing my best to skirmish here, but it can be a little difficult. Nurgle actually has some pretty good skirmish elements. Out on the field with all these, you know, throwing axes. The Barons of the Bog over here are just destroying my poor Bloodletters. They have gotten no value, and they're dying pretty horribly. More shots coming in, killing a few of the Plague Toads, actually, and getting some nice damage on Kugath here. Trying to stop him up with the Spawn, who gets some good damage on the Marauder Horseman throwing axes, and the Skull Cannon actually landing a shot on Kugath there. These things are actually pretty effective against really large targets like that. Getting a good route on the Marauder Horseman also very favorable for me, and the Spawn of Khorne not going to fight Kugath here, instead going to focus in on these Plague Toads and the Exalted Plague Bearers. Not the best fight in the world for them, though. There's just a lot of very meaty and stalwart units here. They're taking quite a bit of damage. I'm not 100% sure from what, but I think it is some of the javelin fire coming in from these Exalted Plague Bearers doing really nasty work. Sloutmere coming down and not doing a lot of damage. Really should have held on to that a little bit longer to get a better use out of it, which is unfortunate. Barons of the Bog jumping over here, trying to help out the Frolickers Bubonic, who are taking a lot of damage and crumbling out, which is nice for me. They haven't done too much damage with their melee reflection and healing in return. And I'm also getting a nice pick on these Plague Toads here. Fleshhounds coming in to help out. Skull Cannon going to line up a shot on these rallying throwing axes and going to get some good damage on them if I can get it on target here. And it's just a very wide, sprawling battlefield right now. You know, Bloodletters and Marauders holding down the number 1. Retreating back with these Bloodletters and the Marauder Horsemen from the middle. I do hold it right now. I'm trying to hang on to it as much as possible to get a ticket lead. Valkia and these Flesh Hounds doing some nice damage, clearing out these Plague Toads, which is perfect for me. Getting rid of these guys is very important to protect my Marauders. Barons of the Bog are chasing these guys down and doing a lot of nasty damage to them, and the Spawn, unfortunately, have not really performed. Some Minotaurs are out on the field and trying to get some damage onto the Marauder throwing axes, but Apostate doing a very good job of microing them around. They've gotten some nice damage on the Soul Grinder, but he has caught them here, and he will absolutely annihilate these guys in combat. Terror Rout going down on them, which is really nice. I'm going to be seeing if I can do some work against the Plague Bearers here, and, you know, trying to do something about these Chaos Warhounds that are rallying and trying to get on top of my Marauder Horsemen of Khorne throwing axes. Should just turn and charge these guys down at this point, because these guys are excellent in melee combat, but trying to preserve them as much as possible and pulling them through the Bloodletters, but Apostate making a great call and rerouting these guys, so love to see that from him. Kugath is pretty low, and I probably could have stood to maybe focus in on him a little bit more. And the Flesh Hounds, not sure why they're not quite paying for themselves. They killed a Plague Toad. They've done some really great damage to these Marauder Horsemen throwing axes, who are getting worked down real bad right now. Another unit of throwing axes getting crushed by some Minotaurs here. The Minotaur's trying to pull out of combat now, but it might be a little difficult because the Barons of the Bog and Plague Toads are here. So I'm going to turn and fight here, because these are all large targets, and Valkia needs a little bit of support here. She can fight very capably. I am trying to pull her out, but I will turn her to fight, popping Demon Shield and just leaving the Minotaurs in here to do some work. Skull Cannon doing some really good damage. Gonna drive right through these Plague Bearers here and do some good work. Collapsing in with the throwing axes, who are gonna try and do some damage to the Plague Bearers, while some Bloodletters follow up with the Soul Grinder coming in behind them. Using both of these Bloodletters, they're pretty tattered and really haven't done much, which is very painful, but I'm going to try and take this number 3 objective, since the number 1 is pretty securely held by the forces of Nurgle there. Some interesting play coming over here. Nice setup from Apostate with the Marauders. Hanging on to the number 1, Nurgly's coming out with the Hound support. Gonna send a Blood Shrine over here with some Bloodletters to maybe try and push this objective away. Try and keep it nice and secure for myself. Minotaurs, they have done some decent work, but they're getting beat up pretty badly fighting the Festering Stooges, Barons of the Bog, and Plague Bearers here. They've killed a Plague Toad, done a lot of damage to the Barons, and Valkia is still very healthy. She's gotten some nice work done. Plague Ogres coming out, though. This is going to be a little scary for me, because I don't have a great answer to them. My Minotaurs are running. I don't want to use the Soul Grinder to try and kill those guys. They will do some nasty work to them, and I am losing these Marauder Horsemen throwing axes over here, which really hurts. Frolickers Bubonic coming back out onto the point. Nurglings here. Probably should have gotten these Bloodletters to go fight the Frolickers, but I'm going to pile into combat against these Plague Bearers here. And Bloodletters do have a decent fight against Plague Bearers. I need to get rid of these Barons of the Bog, though, because they are really stopping up a lot of the punching power from my units. Horn of Khorne does go down, giving my army a huge power spike here. But the Frolickers Bubonic just collapse onto the rear of my units, and it's going to be pretty painful getting the leadership debuff on all these guys. Skull Cannon doing some nice work, paying for itself already, man. Those things are seriously underrated. The Soul Grinder doing some nice work too, also about up to its value. But I do not have a, I do have a double cap, but I am losing the number 3 because there's just so many Nurglings coming out, man. Nurglings and Pestigores aplenty. Collapsing on these Hounds with the throwing axes is really nice for me. They win this engagement pretty comfortably, and they have a little bit of ammo left with most of their models, so they'll be able to get some nice effective damage against a lot of these targets, but losing a lot of my coverage with the Bloodletters, and those Furies just dove in and died immediately. I don't know what was doing so much damage to them. I guess the Plague Bearers here are pretty good against them. Bloodletters were pretty tattered getting into combat to begin with. And Valkia, man, she's just so good. She's just down here fighting in the pits, killing Plague Ogres and doing some nice damage to the Plague Ogres as well, picking off quite a few models and getting these guys pretty low. They've gotten some okay value, though, which is pretty painful for me, and Kugath is just sitting here in the middle. He has gotten a lot of value off of his ammunition here. That is where most of it has come from. Some Bloodletters killing Exalted Plague Bearers with the Bloodletter support, and Skull Cannon doing some nice damage there to Kugath. And throwing axes, getting on top of Kugath to do some extra damage. Really nice Stream of Corruption. Apostate has been so on point with that magic. That is probably one of his calling cards. Very effective work done with that. Hounds of the Blood Hunt, trying to find a combat to get involved with, but I don't know what it is about these guys in the Nurgle matchup. They seem to really struggle, honestly. The Soul Grinder's suffering pretty badly here. There is just a lot of Nurgling forces here, and I do not have the units to take this number 3, and I have a value lead, it says, but it doesn't feel like it. Nurgle's healing is just so meaty, so difficult to deal with, and my Bloodletters have been collapsing and dissipating at a pretty horrendous rate. Hounds of the Blood Hunt not trading super well into these Plague Toads either. These things have pretty good stats, and, you know, I don't know what it is about them. They seem to be quite capable at beating up on the Khorne forces, which is not great for me. Getting some nice damage with some more throwing axes here, but really needing a way to get more victory tickets. I have taken the middle objective here, but I am going to lose it as all of these infantry stream in over here, and I don't really have a local advantage anywhere. I'm bringing out some more spawn. They're coming out here again to try and help out the throwing horsemen here, who are almost breaking from these Furies who are just swarming in on these guys. Soul Grinder doing a good job of pushing them away, doing some nice damage and collapsing back in. Gonna start killing these guys and thinning them out decently, but losing the middle objective again. Yet again losing that double cap, and Nurgle is about to start overlapping me in points, which I really can't afford to have happen. Bloodletters summoned out, and they're going to be pushing up on the number 3 while I try and rally my forces here. Nurgle does have a lot of pretty slow stuff here now. You know, I mean, they can move around as much as they want with all these guys, but they're a little tattered now. I'm thinking that maybe this is my opportunity to start grinding my way back into this game. Hounds of the Blood Hunt, 20 models, and decent value. Maybe going to be able to do some good work late in the game. And the Blood Shrine, doing some nice work here. Skull Cannon, gonna fire in on these throwing axes. Gets a nice shot in there, killing 6 models, man. Really love to see this thing performing. It's got 3 chevrons now. It did start with 1. 1 chevron actually helps it a lot with accuracy, I've found. I don't know why it's so useful, but that's just the way it is. Valkia is fighting some Furies up in the sky. Nurgle Furies are not great against her. They don't really get through her really incredible armor values, and melee defense is also pretty good, and aerial combat in general is kind of haggard. I don't know what it is. Units have a hard time collapsing in and doing good work. Gonna get some throwing axes in there to help her out a little bit. These Marauder Horsemen, they're going to pile in with the Bloodletters here and just get a nice charge in these Pestigors and do some good damage before they end up getting escorted off the battlefield. No point in unsummoning them. I'm not going to get much of a rebate on them. Hounds of the Blood Hunt are going to try and collapse in here as well, while the Skull Cannon trying to get away from Kugath there. Bloodletters running as well. Trying to finish off these Furies here has been a exercise in futility for quite a while now. They've gotten some good value, but Skull Cannon and the Soul Grinder with Valkia are definitely going to be able to do it now that they've landed. And love the Soul Grinder, man. Almost out of ammo, and it's going to be up to it in melee now. It's got 2,000 health remaining, which isn't too terrible. It'd be really nice if there was a way to get a little bit of healing on the Khorne roster, but you know, that's easier said than done. The Plague Ogres here, getting some great value against my Spawn, who are just getting beat up, man. Very surrounded right now. They're doing some decent damage in return, and I'm getting some good fire in with these throwing axes, doing some nice work against them, and Valkia comes in to support these guys. They are unbreakable, so they'll stay here until the end of time, and, you know, they've done a little bit of work. I think they're just not very good. I keep trying them out in a variety of matchups, and they just never really prove to be all that effective. Fleshhounds, though, collapsing in on both of these Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes, and I've gotten a much bigger value lead now, and it's starting to look like maybe I'm going to be able to get my way back into this game finally. Taking this number 3 objective, but it is so close, and I'm not 100% sure on the math, but it's close to triple cap territory, and I still haven't quite managed to flip this. I need to get these bloodletters all on the point, finish off these plague toads that are just being so sticky and annoying. I would imagine that their leadership would be collapsing at this point, but not so. Huge collapse from my opponent, but I do manage to secure this objective. Fleshhounds collapsing back in, going to be getting on the rear of a lot of these units, and going to be doing some nice damage with the skull cannons, providing a little bit of extra infantry, anti-infantry punching power. The bloodletters doing some nice work here, and gonna need to pull the skull cannon away, just because the plague ogres are here doing some good damage to it. Soul Grinder moving into combat, 2100 value on this guy, and really loving life. These Marauders, they're just holding on the number 1 yet again, but need to make something happen here. I do believe it is triple cap territory at the point of this game, and I'm just not quite able to finish off these Festering Stooges who have been holding for a long time. They haven't quite gotten their value. But Nurgle closing that value gap a little bit here. These Plague Ogres, I mean, you would think that all these guys would start breaking with the amount of surrounds that it looks like I've got on them, but the Festering Stooges, Nurglings, Chaos Furies, starting to turn the tide here, and it's getting scary, man. I mean, I might lose this point all of a sudden. It was looking very favorable for me. I have a lot of units here, but this Blood Shrine taking all of these nasty attacked and rear debuffs, and it's just an absolute mess over here, which is going to favor Nurgle at the end of the day. Hounds of the Blood Hunt collapsing back in, man. These guys didn't hear no bell. That Gore Feast coming in clutch because they're still out on the field doing some nice damage, but you know, not going to be able to save this objective from getting capped out by Nurgle, and I'm not quite looking favorable here on the middle. I am pulling a lot of his forces off, but they are just barely on the edge of the objective. Kugath collapsing in. He's going to start Mortis Engineering all this stuff down. 3,000 value on this guy, most of it off of Stream of Corruption. And that ammunition, man, he is just a vicious fighter when it comes to dropping some fat bombardments on the head of your units, and that is going to be GG. My opponent was able to flip this number 3 objective, and I just was not able to out DPS Nurgle here. Maybe need to go back to the drawing board on this one. I think the Soul Grinder better left at home despite the performance that it put in, but maybe I just need to micro the bloodletters around a little better. I think I could have gotten more aggressive in taking a bigger fight against Nurgle. A lot of my opponent's forces were off on the number 3 to begin with, and maybe if I had just gotten all of these throwing axes on Kugath a little bit earlier and focused him with the Soul Grinder and the Skull Cannon shooting in addition, I might have been able to work this guy down a lot more and put Apostate in a little bit of a hole, but it's hard to say just because Kugath has so much health. He's so tanky, great armor. Great everything, just one of the best duelists in the game on top of all of that kit, so it's pretty vicious fighting him. And Khorne does tend to struggle. Bloodbrute Behemoth is probably your best bet going toe-to-toe against him with Scarbrand probably. The two of them together can usually make it happen for you, and you just bring some Marauder Horsemen in behind that, or honestly Karanak, who I did have in the back pocket, never brought out. Might have been a good call to bring in against Kugath. He can just kind of hover near him and shut down all of his spell casting, and Kugath's never going to catch him, and if your opponent wants to collapse in with stuff that does counter Karanak, like these Plague Ogres, you can use the Minotaurs here to collapse on him, but, you know, we'll go back to the drawing board and come up with something a little different. Nurgle tends to be a faction I struggle against, especially when I'm not really bringing the most meta Khorne stuff, which Skull Cannons are great in my experience, but you don't really see them all that often. They do tend to lack a little bit of efficiency in terms of holding objectives down, and it does leave you a little thin on anti-large support, because its shooting is better against cavalry units. Nurgle does have some cavalry. It can do some damage to Plague Toads, but the best answer to Plague Toads is Minotaurs, and only had one of those guys, and they got countered pretty hard. And I was trying to use these spawn a little bit to see how they did. They just didn't really do too much, so bit unfortunate there. But really well played by Apostate. Not to say any of that to take anything away from his play. He was absolutely on point with maintaining his hold on all of those objectives, and it's really difficult to do that when you've got pretty slow units like Nurgle tends to have. So love to see a Nurgle player coming out here and microing around as effectively as Apostate was, so well played to him. He very much deserved that win. That's going to be it for this one, guys. I'll catch y'all around later. GG's. Peace.